So, did Malady follow those sessions?
I think I'd already written
Yeah.
the album. I write really slowly now. I guess because I'm not under any timelines really, or time constraints. But I like to. Some pieces of music might take several years to write, you know. So I'd had a lot of the ideas for that solo album for longer than I can remember, really. But it wasn't until about 2015 that I decided to record them. And that was, you know, after I'd met my partner Cindy, and that was something that really kind of brought my life together, to be able to really settle down with someone and kind of put my feet on the ground and start making kind of more attainable plans and goals, like learning how to drive, doing a solo album, then doing a degree. Life wasn't as chaotic as before. It was, you know, I was settled in one place. I wasn't travelling, and I was using skills that I already had to kind of get by. And so for me, you know, the whole thing about releasing those Futureheads albums in the day was very much like you hope that it's going to continue your success and stuff like that. But with my solo album, that was not my approach. You know, it was like I want to release these songs just so that they're released and I can get on with my life.
You know? So were they signifying a change in you, do you think, as well? Or?
I don't know. It felt quite empowering to be doing something as a solo artist. I enjoyed that. I kind of getting musicians in, paying session musicians in to come and add other, you know, strings or what have you. But in terms of the experience of releasing a solo album, it was very much like a cathartic kind of therapeutical thing. And then I did some gigs with it, not too many. That's when I kind of discovered I didn't really like being away from home too much anymore. But I was doing a load of solo gigs as a kind of playing Futurehead songs by myself, and that's when I really discovered that being away from home was very hard, because by then I had 2 kids. One of them was a baby, and it felt like I was really doing something for the good of the household, but to the detriment. But it kind of balanced out. But I was driving, you know, I learned how to drive, and then I think 4 weeks later I'd booked a gig in Brighton. So 4 weeks in to passing my test, and I'm driving to Brighton. It's quite mad, that, really, when I think about it. You know, it takes some insanity to think that was. But, you know, then my car broke down. I remember I pulled into Hastings once and my car was practically on fire, you know. I'd worn my brake discs down. So when I was braking, there was sparks coming off my car. It was crazy. And you're like 350 mile away from home. So then, you know, band got back together, and suddenly I'm looking forward to getting back in the van, you know. So we started doing gigs and playing together again, and that was really nice.
Yeah. I mean, that you kind of published some pictures of when you had got back in there and kind of writing stuff. But how long did that process take of getting you all back together again and starting to rehearse again and record?
It felt like a while. I remember we had big discussions, like it was the back end of a year. I can't remember what year it was, 2018 probably. No, it must be 2017. And then it took about 5-6 months before we could actually do any recording or rehearsing. So that I used that time to do loads of writing, which is quite nice actually, because it meant that when we went in to eventually record, there was a load of songs that we'd already sketched out. But we started getting together to rehearse and realised that it was going to take us so much time because you'd only rehearse once a week.
Because of everyone's commitments.
It was like, oh man, this is going to take 5 years. So we just started going in the studio instead of rehearsing. Yeah. We used to just spend an hour rehearsing in the studio and then just do some recording. So at least we were coming out with something, because it suddenly felt like we need to put the pressure on here. So, but again, we could only do 1 day a week. We were recording on Sundays. We were doing 4 hours and then going to Chucho's for tacos. Yeah. It was great. We were just hanging out, but then after you've had 4 tacos or 3 tacos, you come back in, you're like, right then, it's getting a bit sleepy.
Lie down.
Bit of a lie down, yeah. So then we got very intense with the album, and I got to do the finish in it, and then we got someone else to mix it, and we put it out, and it felt good. I kind of felt like we'd made a good album, full of ideas that we were proud of, and to some degree we're back into some kind of situation where getting off of gigs, the work was coming in, and then COVID-19.
Yeah. So before COVID, you took on you found yourself as a landlord and a beginning owner of a training company about to start. Is the plan still, before we go into the ins and outs, is to try and keep the juggle them all, fatherhood now and even growing Tribe, the band and this what's going to be a huge venture.
I think it's the thing about going for it, and trying to progress in life is you have to put everything in order. So if you try and think about everything at once, you can't. It's impossible. You just get crushed by all of the things that you haven't done yet. But if you can work out what's the thing that's right in front of me that I need to do, and do that properly. Yeah. At the minute, it's like picking colours for Birdland Studios, right? But 4 years ago, it was like, okay, so what's his course going to be? Yeah. Which university we're going to get to ratify it, and we're going to find a venue. And, I think through being a professional musician, and then when we did the festival and stuff, it's allowed me to kind of juggle. But the main thing is getting a good amount of sleep, which is quite challenging at the minute, but working as part of a team and not taking too much on yourself. So, with regards to the pub and the music school, I've got partners. I've got Cindy, I've got Dan. And then for the band, it's like, well, there's 4 of us. We can kind of all absorb any pressures, but it's different now because we're kind of part-time,
But it sounds strange that, juggling just the band and now juggling all of those things. But like you say, the difference is you've got stability. It's because of
personal growth. Yeah. Being a professional performer is a very dangerous business, because around getting applause is almost intoxicating. So you just want to feast on this kind of attention, and you start to naturally define your happiness based on that, and that's quite an unusual situation. I mean, everyone wants to please people around them generally. It might be family, it might be friends, there might be strangers, but we all kind of define ourselves by our relationships with others. But when the life that we were living, when we're kind of basically international musicians, it was very difficult to kind of have those normal relationships, either in front of an audience or hanging out with people that you're paying every day, to work with you. So the important thing is like building up it's not just personality, it's deeper than that, it's like the being, the father, the son, the businessman, the landlord, the person who's knocking up chicken wings for a party of 50 people upstairs, whatever, as long as you only do one at a time, it's all good. And, several years ago, my business partner asked me if I was interested in getting involved in setting up a music education business centered around a degree. Yeah. And I was teaching a degree at the time and doing a master's degree, and we decided to give it a go. So I started speaking to Sunderland University, and after a long process, we eventually were getting it over the line and passing due diligence and, you know, having loads of meetings. And it almost kind of evaporated at one point, and I was very distressed about that because I'd really, really wanted to make it happen. Yeah. And we were looking at the Manakee, you know, which would be a really cool music school because it's got a venue in it. Yeah. It's massive. You could make loads of little studios for teaching. But, you know, for irrelevant reasons, it kind of it fell through. And then within a few days, we'd been offered a completely different space, which is the Peacock.
Yeah. So at that point, you hadn't even thought of being running a pub at the same time?
Not at all. Never. Yeah. To be honest, we probably didn't have to. We could have just signed a lease on the building and found other ways of making a living and just kept it until the music school was ready to open. Yeah. But, you know, me and Dan had both left our jobs as lecturers and we were doing some gigs as well. So we just thought, let's try it. Let's give it a go. Let's open the doors. Let's learn how to clean lines. And then it started to kind of work. You know, the football crowd was always good. And then we're putting on private parties, engagements, birthdays, christenings. And then suddenly you're like, I'm kind of like running a pub in order to be able to teach music. Yeah. You know, but it's all going ahead. You know, we've been interviewing students. We've got a lad, looks like he's moving up from London to come up and study with us. And the cohort's coming together. The recruitment cycle's pretty long. I was worried it was going to be dead in the water because of the pandemic, but there's clearly an interest there, and it's going to be extremely unique because we're using this Edwardian building and we're turning the top floor into Birdland Studios. We've got a music venue and then a pub downstairs with a pool table and excellent music, and it's kind of like we ended up with a really, I mean, there's a lot of work involved, even just making so that you're barking so that the liquids can come out. That's a job in itself, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Never mind working out drinks offers and stuff. You know, we'll get there with it. We're getting kind of, we were learning a lot before the pandemic.
I mean, you're very hands-on, weren't you? And, you know,
yeah,
being in there and
every day.
Didn't need to be kind of showing your face, but from tinkling along the piano to sort of, you know, choice of music to everything. And I think do you think that'll change, or will you?
I think to be honest, it was important that we got properly stuck in initially, because we needed to, in order to, I think, be worthy of the honour of having, you know, some kind of jurisdiction of the activities in a building such as that, because it's a landmark, beautiful space, and you know, I feel extremely privileged to be in that position. You know, at the same time, it's a bit of a kind of double-edged sword, because not only because of the pandemic, but you know, the heyday of the pub trade was many years ago. So you know, we're not publicans, you know, in a kind of historical legacy sense, but we were learning pretty quick how to at least make that place happen, you know. So I am looking forward to, I don't know about when pubs should reopen, to be honest with you. We don't have a beer garden, so it won't affect us. They're probably going to say beer gardens can open first. I don't know why, you know, we waited until August to reopen, and on the second day, one of our staff tested positive for coronavirus. It was like, hold on a sec. There's pubs in town being open for 3 months, and we're the first one. I think that there's something not being, there's something away there, because we were open for literally 12 hours and we had a case. It's like, whatever.
Yeah, well, you don't know what was really the truth anyway. So, I mean, you know, let's assume they're going to open the next few months. You're going to social distance gigs, whatever, going to spend a bit of time trying to, after treading water for a year, open up that venue, but one big kind of back of your mind that the school's going to.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and the makeup of the business could, once that's running,
doesn't matter.
It's going to change, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Precisely. So, it's at times it was the school became an irrelevant thing in my mind because I was like, I was in a really bad position. I got hoodwinked by a energy broker. And I'm like, oh man, what have I got myself into here? We were on this ridiculous tariff for electricity at the Peacock, and it was stressing me out because I'd been basically ripped off by this guy. And I had to battle and put all of my energy. So the last thing I was thinking about was how to teach someone how to use modulation in a song. But I was kind of like cutting my teeth as a business owner, and I held on. I imagine to bring the tariff down and everything, dealing with leaks. It's
the glamorous side of rock.
I love it though. Yeah. I love it. I love all the cellar stuff, bringing the kegs in, getting rid of them, cleaning the lines, making sure the gas is all right. Being able to pull a good pint. But when we hope that the music school will take on a life of its own, which it will. It's already started. And then, as you say, year 2 down the line, I suppose we could just use the pub as a students' union bar for the students. But I wouldn't want to deny the people who like to come in and drink that. We pride ourselves on having excellent music in the pub, and we've got a pool table. We put a lot of work into decorating it, and I suppose that the main thing that we can try that we haven't done before is making it a daytime place to eat, which is something that Cindy's.
You dabbled a little bit.
We did. We had some food on, but it's tricky with a pub because everyone knows it's a bad idea to go to a pub with an empty stomach. And I think if people really want to go out and eat, they'll book a table in a restaurant. But I think it's changed now, really, because you're probably going to have to book a table to go for a pint. So what's the difference, But food business is so much work, it adds an entirely new dimension of graft. I like doing the buffets. I love it. I'm talking to someone at the minute about having a party, hopefully in June. Yeah. We'll see. But I love triple fried chicken wings, man, with spicy sauce, and making lovely salads and whatever they want, really. Yeah.
But there's something about doing a buffet in a buffet. It seems a very, I know it's not a British thing, but it seems a very British thing. But in terms of preparing the food, there's the reveal, but someone's going to go over and they'll pull the face, but they'll pack the plate full and eat as much as they can. Whereas when there's only 2 people sitting down there and you give them the food, that's immediately time for them to look at it and go, right, what can I pick fault with now? it's so hard compared to years ago. Everyone's a food critic now.
Yeah.
And kind of businesses live and die by
Instagram
and things like that.
I know it's pretty terrible, but it's all about love anyway, hospitality. It's about being genuine and having that kind of the hospitable and charming element, and I love having people in for private parties, more so than gigs, if I'm honest. But I also, there's nothing quite like that when you've got a busy gig upstairs and you walk in to make sure if they need any more ice or something like that, and you've got an audience there and some great performance. It's like, wow. But it's a different dynamic. We look forward to putting more gigs on there, but it's not something we're going to be hammering. We want special gigs rather than trying to do it all the time. We want the place to be thought of as where our students can get it together and start putting on nights, and then work with certain promoters to put on really good gigs, and make that as part of what we do.
So what do you think the students, potential students, are getting that they're not getting elsewhere? I know the answer. I mean, being able to study in a new facility that's got its own venue and it's got, you running it. But what do you think's missing from without having to dig at any others? But what's missing from a university course around here doing that? And what are you doing to kind of fill those gaps?
Well, I think that there's a pretty tired approach to doing higher education music, and it's all based around the development of traditional music skills. And what that really means in the practical sense is every week you have to learn a song, and you have to, you've got a load of musicians. There might be 2 drummers, 5 guitarists, a bass player, and then somehow you've got to cobble together ensembles out of those individuals and make them basically learn a set list. And there's your song, learn it. We're going to mark it on how you perform it, and it never works because drummer 1 doesn't want to come in because the session's too early. The bass player can't be bothered. There's going to be a certain amount of students in any course, especially an arts course, that are... It wouldn't happen on a medicine course, let's put it that way. If you're studying medicine, you're a scientist, right? It's a different thing altogether than a young musician who is exploring academia but really just wants to play. And then, our kind of challenge is to ingrain the academia into the practical plane and the production. So, we don't force our students to learn how to play Superstition or any of those things, because you can do that everywhere else. Our thing is about the personal development of individual musicians. So, if you are a shredder, we're going to pair you, and we will pay for private tuition with the best shredder we can find in the Northeast. And we already know who he is. And you're going to get... So that part of your development is going to be catered for by a specialist. And then we will teach you about the history of music, about music production, how to organise an event, etc., etc. So it's kind of like tailor-made. And because we're a small setup, we can actually do that. If we can get 20 to 30 students, that's enough. We don't want more than that. It's not like BIM, where you've got like 300 songwriting students studying down in Brighton on just one discipline, 1,500 students in the whole school. Excuse me. How many teachers are you going to need for that? How much one-on-one time are you really going to get when you've got 250 classmates? You're probably going to get none, because it's impossible to factor that in. So it's all about this kind of bespoke professional. We have extensive professional experience in the industry, and we're still active. Obviously, we're not doing it full time, otherwise we wouldn't be setting up a music school. But it's like, come and study with us, and we will show you exactly what it is you need to do to become a better artist. We're talking to a lass at the minute who plays the French horn. Right, we can actually cater for her because she wants to go into teaching, so we can probably get her teaching work before she finishes her degree. But she'll also learn about how to record herself, the history of modern music. But really, she'll be her kind of pathway is to come out with a teaching qualification, which is something else that we do as part of the course. She'll be getting excellent private tuition, and she'll be learning about rock and roll.
I mean, what can these students learn from you and Dan, from your knowledge and experience of the industry?
Well, yeah.
That to kind of prepare them for a career. So at the end of the day, they want to do that rather than, like you say, churning out maybe members of cover bands.
Well, exactly. So we are. Well, anyone can come and study with us, no matter. They have to have certain qualifications, obviously, but music's. The art of music is a very flexible, strange thing, really. If we had Ivor Cutler turning up, I don't think I'd turn him away. I wouldn't know what to do with him, but I'd think this man is an artistic genius. Let's see what we can do with him. What's important now, that wasn't important when I was coming up, is to do with the entrepreneurial aspect of being an artist now is so important. So, young musicians, and I always say young, I don't mean young people, I just mean people who are young as musicians. They could be in their 40s, I'd still class them as a young, if they've been playing for a year or something. But it's like, these days you can become your own producer, your own arranger, your own promoter, your own publisher, your own PR agent. You kind of got to.
Yeah.
You've got to do it because the way that record labels are structured has changed, because bands don't need to get an advance off them to go to Abbey Road, because with this percentage, a percentage of that advance could now basically set up a recording facility in a room just like this, or even in a bedroom, and you can make a competitive sound. You couldn't do it then. You needed all those desks and those compressors and those amazing microphones. Not. I don't see that as a negative thing. It's just changed. The record labels have shrunk because one person can do 20 jobs now. They couldn't then. So a young artist needs to be aware of that. They also need to be aware of the fact that it's not an easy ride. The artist's way. It's like a shamanic experience. You're putting your passion into something that is invisible. And you hope that it has an emotion. You're trying to basically make a living by manipulating people's emotions with sound. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to be on top of your game to come close to be able to do that. You've got to be, as I was saying before, if you practice for half an hour a week, forget it. You need to be practicing for 5 hours a day. And it's not even practice. If you can sit next to a guitar without wanting to play it, are you really a musician? I don't think so,
And I always use this analogy whenever a mother rings up often for work experience, or somebody get in touch and go, he really loves it and it's kind of what he wants to do. And I go, all right, how often does he do it? And you're right, if somebody was wanting to be the best footballer in the world, they'd be playing football all day, every
when
day,
the sun's up,
every day. Yeah,
and then inside and getting in trouble.
So if you want to be, top of your game, you've got to do it all the time, every day, all day, every day. Yeah.
There's no decision involved. It's like, especially when you're learning, when you can't get on stage yet. And also, the thing that puts a lot of people off is what to learn next. And that's what, as teachers, that's all I look out for. And that's how you can actually teach something like songwriting, which is quite I find it to be quite a mysterious thing. But being able to identify the specific knowledge that this young songwriter needs next is the skill of the teacher, and I think it's so crucial. Only if the student listens. But I love sitting in a room with a load of songwriters with a piano and explain to them, show them how to use chords. That's my main passion, really, is using chords in harmony. And how things you can do with the colours, and that's not something I would ever really do with a guitar, I
mean, is it worrying? Is there anything we can do and you can do in your school to, that not just locally, but kind of worldwide? Really, we're producing generally, because of the home studio, but singer-songwriters or people who can home produce it and do everything themselves. Kids now don't do what I did, and go out and find three mates and join a band.
No, it's true. But right now it feels like there's no such thing as a band, but that's just because there's nowhere to play. But we have to understand that that's going to change. I don't know when, but it will come back, and we have to assume that it's then going to go through the roof in terms of people will appreciate it more.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I seen a live musician. It was a busker sitting outside of when the bridges was being built. There was this. He might have been homeless, He had a dog, and I was a real little kid, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe this man was making this sound with this thing in his hand, and it was coming out of his fingers, and he was singing. That kind of blown away.
Yeah.
We all have that in us, and I think to some degree we'd really started to take a lot of things in our world for granted by the time COVID-19 hit. Everything, the luxury of going out and sitting with a and liquid and hanging out.
Almost 24 hours a day.
Well, yeah,
You're cooking,
going to see Bruce Springsteen, you know, all of that stuff, going to festivals, being able to move around, you know, all of these things were basically turned off, and we went in this strange experience, you know, and we are coming out of it because of the vaccine, you know. That's why we're doing the vaccine, is to come out of it. So as we're doing relatively well with the vaccine, we can assume that it's going to come back. And I do think that bands, live music, I hope, anyway, it's more highly regarded than it ever was. But, you know, it's hard though, you know, playing. Sitting at the piano after like having like 9 months of not really playing, going, oh my God, why aren't my hands in time? I thought, I can take advantage of this, you know, so now I'm relearning how to play the piano. But with the kind of knowledge of teaching that I have now, so I'm setting up these exercises to do on a daily basis if I can, which are really working, you know, because I feel like a beginner. It's good.
So what's gonna what direction's the band gonna take then, while you're then gonna be juggling, you know, all these kids, all these students?
Well, good thing about kids is that they go to school generally, and then you know what it's like. You've got to just concentrate your times of activity so that it works with your home life. But very much kind of tying the spirit of the band to the building of these creative spaces in the Peacock. So we've talked about it, and once that's ready to go, we're going to start making new music. I think it's kind of like you've got to work out. You know, I'm 40 this year. I'm clearly not a young man, but I'm clearly not an old man. So I'm kind of, I guess, middle-aged man. So what's the type of music that I'm going to feel comfortable and the lads are going to feel comfortable playing at this point in our lives? It's probably not going to be scratchy electric guitar music, you know. We managed to expand the sound of the band, maybe you could say, by taking all the electric guitars away with Rant and then doing all the acoustic stuff. So I want to make a really kind of modern record that doesn't rely on electric guitars, but does allow us to expand our sonic palette and do something quite modern, you know, quite maybe it's off kilter. I love the idea of gypsy punk, this kind of like upbeat, choppy. It still have, you know, I want to make people move, but I don't want to look like a sweaty old man while I'm doing it. You know, I might sit down. I love playing the piano, but it's pretty rubbish. Performing with the piano's very limiting. So I might ask Jaffe to do that, because Jaff plays the piano, Dave plays the piano. I'd love a song that uses a drum machine. So you got no drummer. I would Dave playing bass, Jaff playing some kind of organs, Rossi on bass, me on 12 string. I don't know, but something. The main thing is like something modern.
Does that excite you? Sort of, you know, the future, not just, you know, all those different elements really, which, you know, all in the day you've got to come back home and, you know, keep that all going as well. That's the does making all those, having all those other exciting bits kind of make that other bit you appreciate that more? Or?
I think it's, you know, what I've learned through having some bad times is like you've got to constantly address the balance in your life, you know. And I'm not saying I'm living like a Buddhist, you know what I mean? Like I do live in 21st century England, and I'm very much ingrained in the culture of that. But at the same time, I'm not like I'm not going to allow myself to end up in this situation where I can't deal with life like I did when I was younger and more naive. So, you know, I'm doing that all the time. I do it every day. When I start getting wound up about what colour should that the mixing room be, I'm like, doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter. So it's a constant. I think everything I'm trying to do, I expect to be very challenging, you know. I don't, you know, so therefore when it does become challenging, it's something that I expect, you know, like for the Futureheads to truly self-produce their first album. That's what it's going to be. We've been producing albums for years, but to actually do it so that we're producing it and engineering it, it's going to be an amazing experience. I don't expect it to be easy, especially if we're going to try and make a truly great record. But I'm excited about the challenge.
Do you think, just kind of finally, really, can you know, we spoke earlier on about the exciting development at Fire Station, and you know, right next to
the auditorium.
Yeah. And just it's, you know, they're coming out of this year of kind of solitude almost. You know, everyone's going to be hopefully desperate to get out and do stuff, and there's so much going on, ready to kind of happen something to it. But it's to people our age, I think it's so you know, incomprehensible, because we've never really seen, you know, big successful developments. I mean, the stadium was built in a great football stadium, but generally there's been a lot of false dawns, hasn't there? And a lot of things are brewing at the minute.
Yeah, I think what's been really helpful for me as we've been going through this strange time is like the plans that were set before the pandemic have continued to be pushed forward, and some actually new developments have appeared during this, which I think is remarkable, really. And this involves what's called the Riverside development, and you know that it's a bit like, you know, you paint a picture of the future, and you might be happy with the 70 to 90% of it coming true, you know. So we don't know exactly, but you know, cities evolve anyway. But with the auditorium, I think that's going to be potentially amazing. And well, I think it is going to be amazing. But I think it's just like anything, you know, a venue needs artists, so they've got to get that right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's difficult. You know, people naively think, well, just get bloody Billy Bragg. It's like, when he's available for one day, probably every 3 years, to come in. Pulling it all together, that's what we learned doing Split. It's like logistics of getting artists.
Well, we never touched on Split, but you know, did you ever at the beginning of getting involved in Split ever see where it was going to go? Because you know, and it must be. I think, you know, my mind flashes back to the first one at Ashbrook, and then the, you know, Dizzy Rascal at
with lasers and confetti.
Park, you know, that time.
No, we didn't know.
That was bizarre, you know. But did you ever see it going from there to there, or?
No, I think we kind of got inspired, really. The first one was just a fundraiser for the Ashbrook Cricket Club, and that was just because of a friend of mine, a family friend who I bumped into, and he asked if we would do something. But then it was like, well, you know, let's do something more. So it ended up being this thing with like 9 people involved in organising it. And then eventually you've got to start looking at the numbers and thinking, okay, we're spending uncountable hours pulling this together every year. And what would it take for us to be able to make a living doing this? And it became apparent that it wasn't actually, unless we were going to continue doing it out of the goodness of our heart, it wasn't going to be a sustainable thing. So that kind of last one in Mowbray Park, which I thought was an amazing venue, you know what I mean? What a beautiful park. And we were happy to kind of leave it there. However, now that I've kind of got involved in pubs and hospitality in a kind of major way, I'm more interested in doing a festival. I'm quite interested in organising some bigger events, you know, because if you approach it with the right type of mentality and design the right type of event, you could actually have a lot of fun and possibly make profit. But for me, it's got to breaking even is the goal. If you try and make profit, then quality has to drop. You know, what's clear to me is that events like that should be free. They've got to be free, because you know you can never get your ticket price right.
I mean, there was a point, probably just on that last year of Split, where every town council, every company, everyone was putting a, you know, someone opened a bag of crisps on a field, and it was a festival. It was just sort of.
I remember a festival at the Herrington Country Park. It was a world record attempt. They did a festival around it. I think it was skipping.
Oh yeah, yes, that was the year of the Olympics, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was it,
But,
yeah. It's like, okay, I love that though.
Yeah.
That's what local councils are supposed to be doing.
But maybe not calling it a festival, or well, maybe just sort of putting it as an event, a program calendar of events. So we're not going to rule out.
I'd love to do a music festival. I really would. Maybe it's roots music, in a marquee somewhere, sell beer, and make it free, and just have a good old time, cook some food, and make it small. Just like, why not? You know what I mean? Like, but not about this big corporate thing. It's like, let's remember not so much even the music, the community of it, the seeing loads of people in the same day. That, like, when you have, like, you go to like a festival and you're lying in bed at the end of it, and you can't even take in everything you've seen and drank and eaten and heard. That feast is like, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth the risk. It's worth the time to try and orchestrate something like that.
But is that dilemma of putting on your first 100, 200 people capacity in a nice little marquee, straw down, and just being a Royal Family vibe, to go and like Split, like the band, where you've got to, like any business, where you've got to move to the next step.
I know you do. You though? That's the thing. Do you have to? Do you always have to?
No, you don't.
We're so focused on progress, like, where do you draw the line between enjoying it and hating it? Yeah. That's the crucial thing with anything. But I think as we gain wisdom, we're able to identify that there's even a line there. But when you're naive, there's no line. You're just like, wow.
So you're going to be able to do that now, do you?
I think I already can. I think so, yeah. Because I won't have enough time anyway to dream too much. But doing it with partners is the crucial thing for me anyway. But we'll see. As I've said, the Northern Academy of Music Education's like the thing I've been really trying to establish for. I suppose it's the thing that I've concentrated on making happen more than anything else in my life. Even the band. I decided to set up a band. A few weeks later, the band existed, whereas this was like 4 or 5 years ago, and we haven't quite got it over the line yet. So it's probably going to be the greatest thing I've ever achieved if it works. And I'd say the same for Dan. Yeah.
But like you say, now you've always had this ability of writing, making that list, focus on one thing at a time, get it done, then move on to the next one.
Yeah.
That'll get you through it, yeah.
I think so. But there's nothing wrong with extending the list. Yeah. As long as you don't try and do the one step at a time. Yeah.
Exciting times, so yeah. Well, thanks Barry. Thank you very much, mate.
My pleasure.
Enjoyed the chat. Best of luck with everything this year.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll be out of it all very soon. And
yeah, man. We're gonna. It's going to be an interesting ride out of this, but there will be a moment of realisation when we're like staggering down the street to the kebab shop, and there's no wardens on the street, and it'll be like, wow,
It's. I mean, as difficult it is to comprehend where we are and what we were doing 2 years ago, I think it's very difficult to comprehend us in 2 years' time looking back.
Yeah, we've got to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
The unknown aspect of life is very vivid at the minute, and you could say that when you can make firm plans, life's a bit boring.
Right, thanks very much.
Cheers.